Yeah, how is this?
You are saying something?
I was just asking that how's the situation at your end in Muzaffarpur?
Uh, in my city, it's not that worse, but still, everywhere people are finding it very difficult to find beds and basic medicines. Even if someone is getting oxygen cylinder, oxygen kit is not there. So, problem is there. We are trying our level best, whatever we can do. But it's no systematic approach where you can get what. So everything is very ad hoc. You have to try hundreds of things. If your luck is good, please mute yourself, everyone. So if your luck is good, you will find something. If not, then you will not. There is no established, predefined channel that ऐसा करो तो you will get something. And this is almost everywhere. Today I was in no condition to teach you all, but I said that your preparation is also very important. So I should teach you something. In the last class, we have done up to chapter number 8. So today we are doing chapter number 9 and 10. Uh, by now, we have read about the first war of independence or the struggle of 1857, and we saw that how the British policies changed after that. So this is very important. Many questions will be asked in many exams. So whatever exams you are preparing for, you should. Oh, we have 90 students live connected with us. That's a surprise. I think lockdown has some impact on everyone. Like you cannot go after 7 anywhere, so people are now coming to class. Good. Uh, yeah. So before this, we have read about 1857, and after that, how the Act of Good Governance came, how East India Company was abolished, and we also read about the Indigo revolt that happened, and how the plantation then shifted from one place, from West Bengal to Patna or Bihar. So, in the previous chapter, we have looked at, just giving you a brief, British conquest of territories and takeover of kingdoms. So, we saw that how they expanded and ultimately they captured Awadh. So, the last one to capture was Awadh. Then, introduction of new laws and administrative institutions. We saw that how judiciary was established, how police system or how collectors were given more power and they become a power center. Then laws were passed to control taxation. About three types of taxation laws we read about: permanent settlement, Mahalwari, and Rayatwari we read about. Then we read about change in life of peasants and tribals. We looked at how peasants suffered miserably because now there was no one to buy their. So peasants suffered because the rate of taxation was very high, and they were forced to grow crops which they were not willing to. Oh, 21. Congrats to our class. 21 people are here. So if I subtract myself, we have reached 20. recording, you will get the link from YouTube. Okay, let me start the recording too, just a fail safe mechanism. But you will get a link from YouTube like the previous class. I think that's much better than giving you the recordings, because in those lessons you can control the speed and all, what kind of network you are, so you can change the. Yeah, so pigeon, we were talking about lives of pigeons, so how they suffered because of high taxation and forced growing of indigo and all. We read about tribals. They suffered mainly because of tribal law, the forest acts which were in force at that time. And these forest acts mainly, what they did, they snatched the chances of livelihood from them. They were dependent upon forest, and now they could not harness the forest resources. So they rebelled. We read about educational changes, that how the Pathshala system or Gurukul system that was there in India, lacks of schools, that was destroyed, and a fixed rigid discipline system based upon the Western idea was established, and that also led to a massive resentment. Then we read about debates regarding condition of women. We read about how Sati Pratha was there. We read about that women were not allowed to read. We read about child marriage. We read about the idea of polygamy, where one person was marrying several wives, and the gap between the age of male and female. So all those things we read about, and how reformers came and they tried to change the system. Then we read about the caste system, and we read about many social and religious reformers, starting from Raja Ram Mohan Roy. Then finally we read about the revolt of 1857 and its aftermath that I was discussing a bit ago. Decline of crafts and growth of industries we have read. Craftsmen, artisans lost their job, they migrated to cities. We read that this industries grew because of 1914 World War, and a lot of demand for textile and iron, steel emerged from Western countries, and India kind of become a major supplier of those things. So this, all these things we have covered. Now from 1870s there was a different feeling. You will notice that till this period everybody is fighting for his own right. Peasants are far fighting, like I said, they are not complaining against the government like we are not complaining. So they are not complaining against the government, or they were not complaining against the government, they were complaining against the money lenders, sometimes the planters, and similar people. And those, they were complaining against those who were in direct contact with them. And there was no pan India movement. Like Indigo Revolt was limited to West Bengal, Satnami Revolt was limited to the central India, and similarly other revolts have their own geographical reasons. There was, nobody was fighting for independence that Britishers should go now. Everybody was, what was the major demand even after 1857, and many people accepted that the crown should take the responsibility of India. It should not be left in the hand of East India Company. So you see, the idea was completely different. It was not to get liberation, it was to कि हम वो पूरा अच्छे से कंट्रोल करो. ठीक है, थोड़ा सा क्यों करके रखा है. If you want to rule us completely. बीच बीच का मत करके रखो. That was the idea then. But soon there is this idea of emergence of nationalism. People realized that what is this country of India and for whom it is meant. It's a very important topic. You should understand this. It's a very misunderstood topic. Even in present time, you should understand difference between nationalism, patriotism, criticizing a government. So, how many of you have seen a recent video which is going viral? Kangana Ranaut is saying something about people who are accusing the government and the image of country. किसी ने देखा है? People from North India, those who understand Hindi, किसी ने देखा? Good, तुम लोग सब बहुत अच्छे बच्चे हो, नहीं देखना चाहिए. So there's a group of people who think that criticizing government is criticizing your own country. So defaming or asking questions to leaders is asking questions or defaming our country. If you and they think that it's some Western conspiracy or some kind of conspiracy, someone sitting abroad is trying to do this with India, trying to tarnish India's image. I don't know how great our image is, which will be tarnished, but that's the perception in certain quarters of our country. Its emergence is, you can track its emergence from here. Before this, there was no idea of, like we discussed in when we were reading medieval India, that India was there as a geographical entity. People were referring it as a that I am going to India or I have been to Hindustan. Such terms were used, but there is no idea of India as a government, as a country, as a political entity, as we saw today, governed by a prime minister or having a constitution, having a judiciary. ऐसा कुछ इंडिया में नहीं था. Every part was divided by different kind of laws, different kind of rulers. But in 1870s, mainly because this was a time of global movement. I hope you will remember that while I was teaching ancient India, I told you that some ideas are there which spread all across the country at the same time. You will find thinkers, even today they read about themselves and they get inspired. But in ancient time, even when they were not contacting that much, I have to work by that to be a little bit more responsible as a class is about that. So I told you that you will see if you read history in much more detail that the ideas that are generated in one part of any part of the world, they kind of remain similar in different parts, and people or thinkers thought in the similar direction in all societies. So in all across the world, this idea of nationalism was rising at that time. Like we read in probably in the classic previous books, that how idea of a French country based upon the speakers of French was developed. How Germany, Hungary, they developed a nation based upon their language. Before that, Europe was divided, or people used to identify themselves as follower of this very church. So its area can be very wide. So, but there this idea of nationalism emerged, and slowly it came to India too. Indian people now started asking, what is our country? Everybody in Europe has their own country, which is our country. And if we had a country, then for whom it is meant? Who is getting the benefit of the resources, the prosperity of this country? And when these questions were asked, people realized that Britishers are actually exploiting us. They are exercising control over resources of India and lives of its people. And until this control was ended, India could not be for Indians. If India has to be for Indians, the right of these Britishers should end. So you see a complete change in the demand in about this 20 years time. How this change came? One of the main reasons were this English educated middle class or English educated professionals. They were going to Europe, getting European language, and Europe at that time nationalism was the most important topic. They come to understand, oh, अच्छा ये country बोल के ऐसा कुछ होता है क्या? We have to form our country. We have to think on the country lines. So the you can write it like this in exams, or you can understand it like this. Britishers created evangelical style of English style of teaching started by Macaulay to dominate Indians, to civilize Indians, or to exploit Indians, you can say. But Indians use their education to create this idea of nationalism for India. India got benefit of this English education in some sense. At this time, these organizations were created like Pune Sarvajanik Sabha, Indian Association, Madras Mahajan Sabha, Bombay Presidency Association, and of course, finally in 1885, although the date is not mentioned in this book, 1885, Indian National Congress was formed. And this, you can say, is the peak of realization of the idea of nationalism. At least in the elite class, at least in the class of people who are educated, they understand that now we need something. See, before this, see the name of the institution, that will give you some idea. This is about Pune. This is uh, this is Indian Association, but previously it was also West Bengal Indian Association, so name was changed later. This is Madras Mahajan Sabha, so located in Madras. Then Bombay Presidency. All these are talking about a particular region. But finally, the culmination of all these small institutions, organization was the creation of Indian National Congress. Now started thinking from the perspective of country. See, when you will start reading history in detail, you have to remember a lot who founded these institutions, who were the members, what were their purpose, what was the founding years. All these things you have to remember. UPSC have asked very trivial organizations which are very rare to find. So, and this you do not have to search from anywhere else. Your book, that will be your reference book, Spectrum, at least for prelims, that will suffice into giving you this kind of detailed list. So you have to do what all you have to do is go there, find the relevant sections and mug up the things. It's simple. याद करना है उसको. There is no other alternative. So for the first time, when this institution started working and educating people, the idea of sovereignty was understood. So you will be coming across this word again and again in newspapers and so. So the sovereignty is complete independence of doing anything, whatever you want. So there is nobody ever view. In polity you will be reading all about this topic, so who is sovereign, who is not sovereign, but ultimately you can say that all the countries are sovereign because any country can do anything. uh, Sri is asking something. Okay, I will come to that. Mm, yeah, so this is, you can say all the countries in the world are today are sovereign. They can do whatever they want, even though many restrictions are there, like United Nations organization and how many nuclear bombs you can keep and who can manufacture, who cannot, how you have to abide by the laws. Like we were talking about international, intellectual property rights in the case of vaccines. So although many laws apply, but if a country decides that I will not follow any law, like North Korea says, I will not follow any law, so nobody can do anything there. That's what is meant by sovereignty. And this idea of sovereignty also involves a modern consciousness and a key feature of nationalism, that a country should be free to do whatever it wants. At this time, now dissatisfaction which was already there, it also started to grow, mainly because of these two important laws. You should know the Arms Act, which was passed in 1870 Act. It disallowed Indians from possessing arms, and the most repressive of all acts is Vernacular Press Act. Vernacular means local. Other than English, I think I've talked about this before. So yeah, in the previous chapter we read about this, the debate between language and which language should be used for education. So when the Vernacular Press Act was passed, what it did, that the act allowed the government to confiscate the assets of newspapers, including their printing presses, if newspapers published anything that was found objectionable. So, disproportionate power was given into the hands of district magistrates, that they can seize, they can not only apply put a ban upon the printing of newspaper, they can seize the complete setup, all the machines, machineries along with the office, they can seize it. So it was very challenging because, and remember, this is not the time when the printing press are growing everywhere. This was printing press and newspaper, getting printing newspapers were still very difficult task. And on what grounds? If the district magistrate or the deciding authority found anything objectionable. So anything objectionable can be anything. DM can take offense of anything. So it was very sweeping power, and many institutions, many organizations, many printing presses were closed. In the same year, this also came in 1878. Then in 1883, there was this bill called Ilbert Bill. See, still at this time, people were thinking that Britishers are thinking in our interest. So they are now, the Act of Good Governance has passed and they have started treating us. At least the rich people, the jamindars, the nobles, they used to think that we are very equal to Britishers. We are a partner with them. We are running the country along with them. So we, as a issue, there's no issue for us. But when this Ilbert Bill came, it highlighted the racial attitude of Britishers. How, as per this Ilbert Bill, the Indian judges who are qualified and sitting on the benches of judiciary, the law for the first time said that in both British and Indian judges can are can give a judgment in the case which is related to a Britishers. Before this, if Britishers is a accused person, only a British judge will give the judgment. But this act tried to bring some parity and also allowed Indians. And this act was criticized and stopped from being passed in British Parliament of that time. Because they said that how can a low जिसको दिमाग नहीं है ऐसा कोई Indian, how can he give a judgment about a highly educated and a superior race or something like that. So it highlighted the racial attitude of Britishers. So by 1883, the mirage, the disillusionment of the nobles or the very educated people who were getting English education, and they started to talk like I am also a British, I have learned this and I live in London. They also realized कि भाई अपनी औकात पे रहो, and they are racial. They will never treat us as equals. So they also now joined the protest or started thinking that we have to do something. The need for all India organization of educated Indians has been felt since 1880s. See, this is saying educated Indians. So you will see a big departure when the leaders like Mahatma Gandhi entered into Indian struggle for independence. Till now, this is limited to, you will see, and even after 10-20 years after that, these movements, these protests will be limited to educated Indians, because they will be talking on terms of economic drain and itna paisa aaya, itna chala gaya, we have our sovereign right. So I have explained you sovereignty, but still you will be confused कि अच्छा ये sovereignty क्या होता है. And you are educated person, think about if some leader at that time is going to a villager and saying we need nationalism, we need sovereignty, what he will understand. So it was limited to educated Indians. So 72 delegates from all over the country met at Bombay in December 1885, and some of the early leaders, now see, you have to know about all of them. At least 2-3 lines you can write about all of them. Some are very prominent, so you need a brief answer for them as a 10 words 10 marker answer. So you should have at least masala material of 200 words for people like Dadabhai Naroji, Firuz Shah Mehta. Devji is not that important. S.N. Banerjee, W.C. Banerjee can come. Ramesh Dutt has done considerable work, so he can come. So such leaders of that time. See, one thing you will also notice that people from different parts of country are participating, and people from different religion are participating. Hindu, Muslim, Parsis, all are coming to this meeting. And 72 delegates came. A British official named A.O. Hume. You must have read somewhere that founder of Indian National Congress as A.O. Hume. So he was instrumental in creating this organization. Because of this, when you will start reading reference books, you will come across a term called what's the term? Anybody can help me? Because I've read. It's the conspiracy theory is called. Okay, so I am forgetting the exact name. This is slipping from my mind. So what people suggested that this Congress was created because a lot of panic, a lot of anger against British government was emerging into the Indian masses. And so to channelize that anger, so control this anger, a pressure valve theory. So this Indian National Congress was created. Like in pressure cooker, you will see that there is a pressure valve. That if the temperature will become too high, its valve will be released first, and there will be no big damage to the pressure cooker. So similarly, some people suggest that A.O. Hume was given this task by the Britishers to collect these gentlemen's, Indian gentlemen's, and pursue them to create such an organization where everybody can come and say something or criticize or demand something from British government. So giving people a release mechanism, the mechanism to release their anger. But that is a part of another debate. Was it right? Was it not right? If you will read Vipin Chandra, it's a big debate around this, and many historians has been quoted about this. Then, see, one more important thing that you have to remember is the newspapers, the magazines that were coming at that time. So one of the example is Indian Mirror. Similarly, there are at least 20-30 newspapers, magazines which were published at that time. You will again find the list in Spectrum. You should keep that list with you and try to memorize as many as you can. What are the magazines or newspapers published by Mahatma Gandhi, by Nehru, by other such stalwarts? So this book is very famous, and if you do not know, you know now. This is Dadabhai Naroji. Naroji's book, Poverty and Un-British Rule in India. So that's also important now. You should mark this. I've told magazines, newspapers, and the third important thing is books. So which freedom fighter has written what book? That you should also remember. So Naroji wrote the book Poverty and Un-British Rule in India. See the title of the book, Un-British Rule. What does this suggest? I am audible and visible now.
Yes, sir.
Okay, so there was some network glitch. Sorry for that. So try to understand these small things. These small words gives you very big hints. Un-British rule. So and this un-British rule is responsible for the poverty that is there in India. So that's what Naroji is saying. Naroji was in fact You will be surprised to know that he was an MP in British Parliament. He was a member of British Parliament. See, this the boundary of India. So Indians could have gone to UK at that time and fought election and won there. That was the system, like, and that at that time. There's many backgrounds that you do not need to go into that how and why he was elected, but he was very influential. You can think he was sitting in the same Senate, same house where all the laws were made. So he was voting on that and countering and effect. So he was very well versed about what's happening, and that's why he's writing un-British rule, because he's the member of that ruling system. A nation in the making. So when Congress now had started, it's 1885. After that, people suggest and people accuse that Congress in first 20 years was moderate in its objectives and methods. So even now a national feeling has emerged, but people are not asking for major reforms like हमको आजादी दे दो. They were moderate in their demands and they're so moderate in their objectives. They are just asking for small improvements in governance and moderate in their methods. So they're not protesting ऐसा जाके धरना नहीं दे रहे हैं. They're not uh, forcing the government. So a term is used repeatedly. Triple P. They are praying, petitioning. कि भाई ऐसा कर दीजिए प्लीज हमारा ये काम कर दीजिए. So these are the methods. These methods were used by moderates for the first 20 years. So about 1905, this period of moderates continued. During this period, they demanded a greater voice for Indians in government and administration. What they asked? That allow us to participate in government and administration. कम से कम मेरी थोड़ी बात तो सुन लो administration में. That was the demand. They wanted legislative councils to be made more representative. We read that after in 1885, SOS was created. Secretary of State was created, who used to be an MP, and under him a council was created. So now people started deciding that in this council you should include Indians who can give better suggestions, better opinions, and कम से कम हमारी थोड़ी सुन लो कि कैसे रूल करना है, कहाँ प्रॉब्लम है. Give us some voice, give us some thing to say. That was happening at that time. Another very important demand is civil services examination to be held in India as well, not just in London. This was a very big politics at that time. You will see when you will go into our reference books that Britishers somehow kept trying that Indians should not come in the civil services examination, because for them also this was very prestigious exam. And if some Indian is going there and सोचोगे कोई, the whole basis of Britain ruling India was what? That British were superior, a paramount, and Indians were inferior. They do not know anything. Illiterate people, on the country of snake charmers. But if some Indian is going into Britain or London and topping their most prestigious exam, what image it will create? So it will challenge the whole foundation of British rule in India. So they tried in whatever ways they can. We will read that in much detail. You will read about how when an Indian topped the exam or got some rank in top 10, he was just not he was disqualified on the grounds that he cannot ride a horse. So, and another main trick for this was they were just holding exams in London. So if any Indian want to go, if an Indian want to go for giving exams, even at this time it was taking about 3 weeks to go there. The process was not very simple. That you will go. The journey was very tiresome. You will go there. You have to stay there. So people from background, they cannot even think of. You need a lot of backup money to even compete in this exam. Then exams used to be conducted in some subjects were like Latin, Greek. So you do not have to learn just English, you have to learn Latin and Greek also to participate in this exam. They reduced the age so much. So for some time it was like 21 years of age. So by the time Indians will realize that okay, I have to participate in this exam, their age is gone. They cannot participate in this exam. But still, there were some great Indians like Arvindo Ghosh, later Subhash Chandra Bose. They qualified this exam and challenged their perception. So these are three demands you can count: participation in government administration, participation in legislative council, and participation or conduct of exams in civil service exams in India. But they were also at this time, as I said, the idea of drain of wealth was being popularized by people like R.C. Dutt, was an economist at that time. So people like R.C. Dutt, and even in this book, Dadabhai Naoroji wrote about drain of wealth from India. So drain of wealth to England from India. There are many points that how it happened and why it happened. But for simplicity, you should understand that. Sorry. Britishers were exploiting India. Even the wars they were fighting abroad, they were taking money from India. Even the officers who were coming to rule over India, they were paid while they were working in India. They were paid by the Indian government or Indian Viceroy, you can say, and from his purse. And even when they used to retire and go to settle in their country, there also India was paying their bills. एक तो तुम आके मुझे एक्सप्लॉइट करो और उसके बाद मैं तुम्हारी जिंदगी भर का खर्चा भी उठाऊं. All those things led to extreme drain of wealth from India to England. You will read about expansion of railways. So in that expansion, see, today if as a businessman you will invest in any company, you will have certain risk. But what Britishers used to do to that for expansion of railways and supplying steel rails in India, they fix that what may happen. Your product is sold, unsold, poor, bad, or not usable, or whatever quality, you will get a certain percent on your investment. 5%, 6%, something like that was fixed. So a lot of drain of wealth from India to England. So this people in the early phase, the moderates, they thought that there should be an Indianization of industries too. They also asked about separation of judiciary from executive. So as we read about district magistrates. So at that time, district magistrates were very powerful, and even for some time they were even above judiciary. They have the powers of judiciary and executive were combined. They can catch anybody and they can declare them that yes, you have committed the crime. They do not need any proof or anything. DMs were God in themselves. So separation, sorry, separation of judiciary from executive, repeal of Arms Act that we saw, and freedom of speech and expression from what's happening. Freedom of speech and expression. That is, क्या Vernacular Press Act. Repeal that. They raised a number of economic issues that we discussed. The Congress demand economic issues or economic reforms they wanted. So pay attention on this. You can do wrong in exams. Congress demanded a reduction of revenue. You understand this? Reduction of revenue that was being taken from India, Indian farmers, or reduction in taxes, you can say. Cut in military expenditure. A lot of money was being paid to this military persons. They also asked first fund for irrigation. It passed many resolutions on salt tax. At that time, Britishers had started this salt tax. We read about Khudna rebellion. In that we saw that Britishers has kind of monopolized that in Odisha's bank of ocean. Only Britishers can manufacture salt. That also led to the rebellion. Was one of the cause. So they passed many resolutions on salt tax. Treatment of Indian laborers abroad. We read a little bit about indentured laborers, like the artisans who were not finding jobs in India, the peasants who were now out of their work because they could not survive. They went abroad, like working in Caribbean islands, Madagascar, Mauritius, and other such countries. So they said that they should be treated well. Now you can have an idea. At this time, Gandhiji in 1890s was working in South Africa for the better treatment of Indians who were living in South Africa. So that is a common thing between what Indians were demanding in India and about what Gandhiji was demanding on in South Africa. And the suffering of forest dwellers. We have read about that. All this shows that despite being a body of educated elite, Congress did not talk only on behalf of professional groups, zamindars and industrialists. So UPSC can ask this statement as it is. थोड़ा वो confuse करने के लिए तुमको. That since Indian National Congress was a group of elitists, educated elite, they only talked about the situation of elite and did not talk about the poor. But it was not like that. They talked about everyone. They published newspapers, so their methods, wrote articles, and showed how British rule was leading to economic ruin of the country. But this method was soon to be challenged. And the Tikadi, the Trimurti which challenged this is Lal Bal Pal. We must have heard the names. Who were they? Bipin Chandra Pal from West Bengal, Bal Gangadhar Tilak from Maharashtra, and Lala Lajpat Rai from Punjab, Haryana region, so from North India. These three leaders were considered as radicals, moderates versus radicals, and their objectives were radicals and they adopted radical methods too. They criticized moderates that they are doing politics of prayers. You want independence, they were saying independence, they do. In this way nobody will give you independence. What they emphasize on that self-reliance and constructive work. Self-reliance you understood, be more dependent upon your own resources. Constructive work is ऐसा बिल्डिंग बनाने का काम नहीं. Constructive work is helping poor, giving them education, creating infrastructure in village, creating hospitals in village. All those things are called constructive work. So they focus on self-reliance and constructive work. And this is the famous slogan, you know, freedom is my birthright and I shall have it. स्वतंत्रता हमारा जन्म सिद्ध अधिकार है और हम इसे लेकर रहेंगे. Anybody can Pune or Maharashtra area can say this in the Marathi, the actual translation, actual line that he said. Freedom is my birthright. किसी को मालूम है? प्रत्युष, तुम्हें तो नहीं मालूम होगा. मे बी प्रियंका नोइंग. क्या ऐसा कुछ है? स्वतंत्रता स्वाधीनता माझा हाँ?
स्वराज्य हा माझा जन्मसिद्ध अधिकार आहे आणि तो मी मिळवणारच.
Again. It sounds good. That's why I'm asking.
ओके सर. स्वराज्य हा माझा जन्मसिद्ध अधिकार आहे आणि तो मी मिळवणारच.
स्वतंत्रता माझा जन्मसिद्ध अधिकार आहे. ठीक है, whatever. तो ऐसा
Yes, sir.
उन्होंने कहा कि we shall have it. That is my birthright and nobody can stop me from getting this. Now I'm not going to pray to you that give me this. It's my right. I will take it. And then come a big defining movement that you can count it as another step in our journey. Like we started from 1765, you can say, Diwani rights. Then the major pillar for us was, before this we started from 1707, death of Aurangzeb, and in between we saw what all the things happened in 1765, which just took the control, got the Diwani rights, and then we can directly come to 1857 when there was this big revolt. After that, I said you that one major defining movement you can call 1885 as a big step where Congress was formed and this sense of nationalism emerged. But the actual realization happened in 1905, the partition of West Bengal, because in this period it was all moderates, partition, pray and protest in a limited manner. So 1905, what happened? Lord Curzon, or Viceroy Curzon, he partitioned Bengal. If you will see, at that time, I can pull a map. You see. This will not have any map. Okay, so let me draw. If you remember India's map, something like this. This was Bengal. I told you that at the time Bengal province was very big. Later it was separated and many other provinces were created. But even after many partitions, Bengal province at that time was consisting the parts of today's Bihar, today's West Bengal, today's Jharkhand, today's Odisha, today's Assam, today's Bangladesh. This was the region of Bengal in about 1905. And as you see, if you can see in the name of those who are participating in even 1885, many of the leaders are Bengalis. We saw even the first, it's called Bengali Renaissance. We read about Renaissance in world history. Renaissance अब पुनर्जागरण जिसको हिंदी में कहते हैं, Renaissance came in Europe, where the thought process, thinking of people change and they become very modern. So similarly, it's said that with Rajaram Mohan Rai, a renaissance come in West Bengal, and even today many Bengalis find themselves very proud of this, that uh, we are a group of people who kind of bring modernity to India, and still they are the thing that they are, kind of whatever stereotyping you can say. So Bhadralok. To check this rise of patriotism and nationalism in West Bengal, Britishers come up with an idea of dividing the Bengali population. So all this was being done by Bengalis, but as I said you, there were Biharis who were maybe speaking Hindi, Bhojpuri, and many different languages. Then there were Odisha speaking Odia. Bengalis were in this middle range, like Bangladesh and West Bengal. So they divided the country in such a way that Bengalis in both the regions became minority. So Bihar, West Bengal, and Odisha was together. So in this mixture of three states, Bengalis were very few. Here also in Bangladesh, the majority of the population was Muslim. Assam was Jangumiyaj and other communities. So here the Hindu Bengalis became minority in both the regions. So they could not send now. At that time, considerable rights have been given to Indian Council. We will read about Indian Council Acts which were passed subsequently, and we come to understand that by 1891-92, many rights were given to these councils, and these members of this Indian members of these councils were effectively using that too. So to discourage that these people will go there and ask tough questions or unite people to protest against us, just divide them. That was the basic premise. But what they said, that we are doing this for administrative convenience, because it's very difficult to rule such a big state and people speak many different languages. So let us divide it. But it was so it was clear to everyone that's why they are dividing. So a big protest emerged at that time, and we read about how Hindus and Muslims united, and the people from both the provinces which are partition, they tied rakhis to each other on the final day of partition. At this time, a conflict emerged within Congress, that how we should approach this challenge, how we should protest, how we should demand withdrawal of this act. It's so wrong. They're splitting Bengali people and politicians. So moderates were still saying that treaty and partition and prayer. Radicals come up with novel methods of mass protests, as we will go out and protest in large numbers like we saw today, we see nowadays. Swadeshi movement. I remember a book written by R.K. Narayan, Swami and Friends. In that book, there is very funny incident mentioned there. When this movement was happening, Swadeshi movement was basically some movement, you will understand, where people started boycotting the foreign products. So whole idea was what? That Britishers are, by this time, Britishers are taking raw materials from India, raw materials ले गया, and selling British made goods to Indians, and they are earning a lot of profit on that. So that was the main modus operandi. The Britishers said that okay, you take our raw materials, but we will not use your product. We will not use at all. How you cannot force anybody to नहीं तुम मेरा ही पैंट पहनो. I will not wear pant. I will wear dhoti. So this was the Swadeshi movement, boycott of the British made products, and people used to burn these British goods in open on roads. Big massals were, julus were, protests were organized around those. Yeah, so I was telling you about this incident about the story in that book, Swami and his friends by R.K. Narayan. In that book, Swami was this kid, as you must have heard about Malgudi Dates stories. So Swami was a kid, and he was admitted into a British missionary by his father. Although he did not wanted to go there, but his father thought that they provide good education, तो उसको वहाँ admission करवा दिया. He got new dresses, and along with that, he got a topi, cap. When he so as a kid, when he saw the protests are happening and people are throwing their British goods into that bonfire, he also threw his cap. उसको भी लगा कि ये भी ब्रिटिश वाला है, मैं भी, मुझे उसके अंदर का ऐसा देशभक्ति जग गया, उसने भी अपनी टोपी फेंक दी. When he came to his house, his father and उसके पापा ने उसको बहुत मुश्किल से वो टोपी खरीद के दी थी. That was very costly too. And that was costly precisely because it was an Indian made cap. But he did not have that idea. तो ऐसा एक नेशनलिज्म बच्चे बच्चे में अब इमर्ज होने लगा था. Even now, kids were getting influenced by these ideas of nationalism and all. So this was the idea of Swadeshi movement. And the same movement in Andhra Pradesh was called or took the shape of Vande Mataram movement. Well, when you will read, if you have interest and go read the story of great freedom fighters, you will understand that just to sing Vande Mataram, they were punished so severely. 21 Koda hunters. So hunters were not normal hunters like you have seen. One hunter will take a chunk of your flesh. So for just singing Vande Mataram, sometimes masses used to be fined. एक साथ में 500 लोगों पे फाइन लगा दिया. Those all those who are singing Vande Mataram, they will be fined. So, but still people used to sing. So one confusion can be there. See, Vande Mataram is written in Bengali, written by a Bengali person. So you might confuse that this would have happened in West Bengal, but it's happened in Andhra. And Bengali in Bengal we had Swadeshi movement. So do not get confused. As I said, newspapers and books you have to keep a note of. So at that time, Bal Gangadhar Tilak was publishing Kesari, or tiger, or lion. Lion, it means lion in Marathi. So he was publishing this newspaper. So boycott of British were not just limited to goods. They also boycotted British institutions like their schools, like their courts. So you will see that in this period many Swadeshi schools, the idea of national education came. Let's see, in British schools they are teaching that okay, British Queen is very great and she had the born right to rule everybody. So we will not send our kids to this Christian or British schools. We will devise our own national education. Then Swadeshi enterprise. Now you can relate that in 1914, when the time came, we already had a idea there of Swadeshi enterprise, that India should have its own enterprise. So when the opportunity occurred, Indian businessmen were ready because the foundation was already laid into this because of this movement, Swadeshi enterprise. And use of Indian language. When I said अभी विदेशी नहीं use करेंगे, we will read write in our own language. So even when this language becomes such a big issue, that you will see that Gandhi spent his lot of time on spread of Hindi, because he thought that as a country we need a common language. And even though he was Gujarati, he used to give his speeches in Hindi all across India. So use of Indian languages. Some individuals began to suggest that revolutionary violence would be necessary to overthrow the British rule. This was the period of revolutionary violence, the first phase. We read of revolutionary violence in 2 or 3 phases. This was one of the phase of rise of revolutionary violence, where people were just not limiting themselves to protest and plead or mass movements. Now they were targeting British officials and trying to kill them. So you will remember a name, Khudiram Bose, Praful Chand Saki and Khudiram Bose, very young kids in their 16, 17. I think Bose was even not 16, he was about 14 or 15. So they thought that to avenge the partition of West Bengal, they should kill the magistrate or the official who has given this order. And they went on to doing a violent act. Many similar organizations like Anushilhan Samiti and others came up. So idea of revolutionary violence. One major movement came which will now become a part of our discussion throughout this debate is creation of All India Muslim League at Dhaka in 1906. In 1905, partition was done. So as I said you, in Bangladesh, the division was made on this ground only, that Hindu Bengalis will become minority here. And it was a kind of appeasement. You understand appeasement? Appeasement is like trying to please somebody, giving somebody something which he may not deserve. So Britishers tried to appease this Muslims. Try to understand this. This is West Bengal. The region has many Hindu Bengalis, and this is one electorate. So if somebody has to elect it, these Bengalis are the majority. Let's suppose I do not remember the exact figure. Let's suppose Bengalis are 50%. So in the combined Bengal before partition, they can elect anybody. All the seats will be filled by these Bengalis. Now in the second situation, same Bengal divided now. Here you have Bengalis which will be left only 20 to 30%, because the rest are Bihari, non people not speaking Bengali, and then there are Udiyas. And here, whatever Hindu Bengalis will be left, they will be overshadowed by Muslim Bengalis. So to gain upon this opportunity, an All India Muslim League at Dhaka was created in 1906. So to also try to relate from 1857 that at that time most of the British officials also said that the main culprits of 1815 elections are Muslims, and as we read that they kept seeing Muslims with a great skepticism. So in this period of 1857 to 1905, you can say Hindus were kind of appeased. उल्टा चल रहा था. Most of the posts were taken by Hindus now. Before this, even 1857 or even before Muslims, even when Britishers were not there, you know that most of the elite class were Muslims because they are coming from that dynasty. Mughals were there. They used to have great life, great luxury. But 1857 changed all that. Sorry. So even if you have a lot of money, you are a noble, but तुम्हारी दाल नहीं गलेगी ब्रिटिशर्स के सामने because you are seen as a criminal. You are seen from a skeptical eye. But that changed after 1905. Because Britishers now started seeing this Hindu Bengalis as a threat, and in response, they started appeasing Muslims. What was the main demand of Indian Muslim League was it desired separate electorates for Muslims. Separate electorate means that all of the Muslim population will vote only for a Muslim leader. Electorate, you understand? Electorate is all the people in a Lok Sabha constituency or in a Vidhan Sabha constituency, those who can cast vote, those are electorates. So they said a separate electorates. We do not want all people in a constituency to vote for us. We want a separate electorate for Muslims that even though they are from the same geographical area, Muslims will vote only for Muslims. That's the idea of separate electorate. It confuses a lot. So separate electorate they demanded, and it was given to them in 1909. So you now understand the chronology. 1905, 1906, and now 1909 finally separate electorate. So now Muslims are different, Hindus are different, their demands will be different, their interests will be different. So it created a faction in Indian society, divided Indian society, and that was the ultimate aim of Britishers. Do you need some break? I thought that I will teach just a single class for about 2 hours, and then I will. 2 hours तो आज नहीं चलेगा. आज कितना टाइम हो गया? 7 बजे स्टार्ट ही किया था. Okay, I will teach for another 15 minutes and then we will stop this class today. That's okay with everyone? Okay, so Muslim League is created, and they are given separate electorates. So what this does, that this tempted politicians to gather a following by distributing favors to their own religious groups. It doesn't even just did this with Muslims, even Hindus now, because the Muslim person is not going to vote for me, then why should I work for Muslim? So they started distributing favors to their own religious groups. More division happened. Meanwhile, Congress split in 1979. Surat split. Why it split? Very vivid stories are there for it. Like they fought in the meeting. They threw chairs upon each other. They threw chappals and sandals upon each other. So पढ़ना जब reference book पढ़ोगे तो, but ultimately what happened that the moderates, when क्या हुआ, ब्रिटिशर्स सबको मारना शुरू किया. 1905 you protested, you will be crushed. So this revolutionaries thought अब क्या करें, moderates thoughts अब क्या करें. They thought कि we should not protest this much, let's not take पंगा with Britishers. They thought कि अभी जितना पंगा लेना है, आ गए हैं मैदान में तो पीछे क्यों जाएंगे. And because of this, on this ground, the Congress split. Actually, you will see that there is a lot of melodrama behind. They want revolutionaries or the radicals, they wanted their president to be elected as the president of Congress, and moderates wanted their, and there was no consensus. And because of that, a fight emerged. Congress broke. Later, after the split of Congress, Congress came to be dominated by moderates, with Tilak followers functioning from outside. Tilak was a radical, remember? And because of this revolution and after killings and all, these radicals were crushed with utmost power. So either many were left the politics completely, or many were imprisoned. So radical movement kind of died after this split because there was no leader to follow. Moderates survived. The flexibility of a plant, it protects it from strong winds. So moderates survived and they dominated the Congress. In 1915 again, they united. That's Lucknow Pact. Later class में वो सब बहुत डिटेल से पढ़ना. In Lucknow Pact, next year the Congress and the Muslims signed the historic Lucknow Pact. This merger happened in 1915, and the Lucknow Pact was, they were fighting with Muslim leagues. They have become their competitors. But in 1916, in Lucknow Pact, Congress and Muslim League signed a deal and they decided to work together. A big change. So by 1970, all are united again. Radicals, Muslims, moderates, all are under same umbrella. They have realized that alone we cannot fight. Now, growth of mass nationalism. As I said, till now, nationalism was, till 1950, nationalism was limited to educated. So Swami, who is throwing his cap also, is a little bit educated. He's coming from that background. He's living in a town or city. He's reading the news, seeing the protests. And though he's a child. So by 1915, this became a mass nationalism. Nationalism which influenced the common people in the village. Peasants, tribals, students, women in large numbers, occasionally factory workers as well participated in this movement. The government in turn increased taxes on individual incomes and business profits. See, as I said, the First World War was happening, and British needed a lot of funds to support that war. taxing. They need fund for defense. They started taxing Indians much more bigger and much more exploitative ways. Villages were pressurized to supply soldiers for an alien cause. So it was not our war. India had nothing to lose. Who defeated whom in First World War? It was not India's war. British were fighting for their own interest, but they pressurized villagers to send soldiers, and this also caused a sense of alienation in village. And the final thing was 1917, a revolution happened in Russia. So October and revolution and all. In Russia, peasants and workers kind of captured or overturned the Tsarist empire, which was coming from centuries. So people, for the first time, these peasants and workers, the common man in India, they realized, okay, we can also do this. We can become the ruler. We can become the king. So this Russian revolution acted as a ideology or inspiration for Indians. So when we will read further, we will see that in many Indian leaders like Nehru, even Bose, they were highly inspired and they were socialists. They used to call themselves socialists because in Russia, socialism has led to the overthrow of the Tsarist empire, the kings there. Three things. पहला, टैक्स बढ़ा दिया. दूसरा, सोल्जर्स भेजने पड़े. और तीसरा, इंस्पिरेशन कहां से मिल गया? रशियन रिवॉल्यूशन. नाउ एडवेंट ऑफ महात्मा गांधी. आज इसको रहने देते हैं. स्टॉप हियर. मुन्ना भाई की एंट्री we will see tomorrow and we will finish world history tomorrow. Sorry, world history कह रहे हैं. Indian history, modern history. ठीक है. I'm ending this class. अच्छा, C was asking something. That sir, in 18th century there was nothing regarding nationalism. Why British made some policies for Indians? Britishers were trying to control East India Company. They were not interested in how they are ruling India. They are interested in that whatever profits they are earning, that should come to British treasury. That should not go to the directors of the company only. So you will say the act is called the Regulating Act. They are trying to regulate the company, not India. That's why. ठीक है, श्री. चलो. Now I am ending this class. We will see you tomorrow. I will let you know the timings. Probably we will try to do it in the day at 12 so that we can get some window. इस टाइम में तो ज़्यादा लंबा क्लास नहीं हो सकता. So be ready for a long class tomorrow.